She texted, "Oh, my male bestie will crash on your side of the bed." I replied, "Right." Then I purchased a studio across town month to month and sent her a sublease offer for the entire apartment. When she saw the market rent line, she suddenly remembered boundaries. I, 32 male, am a creature of habit and quiet. My life is an ordered system of spreadsheets at my data analytics job, carefully curated playlists for my commute, and a home environment that I've calibrated for maximum calm. My apartment isn't just a place I live. It's my sanctuary, the controlled environment where the variables of the outside world are silenced. I was here for 2 years before my girlfriend Corinne, 30, moved in a year and a half ago. And for a while, it worked. Her chaotic energy as a freelance event planner was a vibrant color splashed across my monochrome canvas. But slowly, imperceptibly at first, the splash became a spill. It started with small things. Her friends staying over without a heads up, leaving a trail of glitter and wine glasses. Her habit of borrowing my noise-canceling headphones for her calls and returning them with the battery dead right when I needed them to focus. Each instance was a tiny erosion of a boundary I never thought I'd have to explicitly state. I'd bring it up gently, and she'd laugh it off, calling me her adorably grumpy old man, before kissing me, effectively ending the conversation without resolution. The frog in the slowly boiling water. That was me. Her male best friend Julian was the embodiment of this boundary dissolution. He was a perpetually between-gigs musician who viewed our apartment as his personal crash pad, kitchen, and lounge. His presence meant my preferred quiet evening of reading was replaced by him strumming his guitar off-key on my couch, helping himself to the craft beer I'd been saving for the weekend. I tolerated him for Corinne's sake, but my tolerance was a finite resource, and the data showed it was trending towards zero. The final, fatal crack in the foundation of my patience came via text message on a Wednesday afternoon. I was deep in a complex data model, finally achieving that flow state where the world fades away. My phone buzzed. "Corinne, hey babe, Julian's gig got canceled last minute and his flight back home isn't for another few days. He's gonna crash with us. Is it cool if he takes your side of the bed? I just know you hate being woken up and he moves around a lot, so it's easier if I'm on the outside. He'll be there when you get home." So I read it once, then twice, my side of the bed. Not the couch, which he had used dozens of times. Not an air mattress. My side of the bed. The space where I slept, recharged, and existed in my most vulnerable state. It was presented not as a question, but as a logistical notification. A decision had been made about my personal space, without my input, and the solution involved me being erased from my own bed. The casual, smiley face and so felt like twists of the knife, a cheerful garnish on a dish of profound disrespect. A strange calm washed over me. It wasn't anger, not yet. It was the cold, hard click of a switch flipping in my brain. The emotional noise vanished, replaced by pure, crystalline logic. The data was in, the model was complete, and the conclusion was irrefutable. This wasn't a partnership anymore. I was a resource. My home was a hotel. My bed was a spare cot. I looked at her text for a full minute. Then I typed my reply. "Me right?" I put my phone on silent, face down on my desk. I pulled up a new browser tab. I didn't search for couples counseling or articles on setting boundaries. I searched for month-to-month furnished studio apartments. My criteria were simple: immediate availability, no long-term commitment, and far enough away that it felt like a clean break. By the time I left work, I had digitally signed a lease on a small, clean studio in a modern building across town. It was an overpayment, a ridiculous expense on my budget, but the month-to-month terms were perfect. It was a triage center, an escape pod. I went home, but not to my home. I went to the new studio. The key was in a lockbox as promised. I walked in. It smelled of fresh paint and disinfectant. It was sterile, empty, and blessedly, beautifully mine. I spent the next 2 hours in a state of clinical focus. I drove to my apartment. Corinne's car was there, and so was Julian's beat-up hatchback. Perfect. They were settled in. I used my key, slipped inside as quietly as possible, and went straight to my home office. I packed my work laptop, my backup hard drives, my passport, and a few other essential documents into my briefcase. I grabbed a duffel bag from the closet and filled it with a week's worth of clothes, toiletries, and the charging cables for all my devices. I took one last look around. My custom-built oak bookshelf, a piece I'd spent months designing and constructing, stood against the wall. It was my proudest creation, a physical manifestation of my love for order and craft. I felt a pang of loss for it, for everything it represented. Then I walked out, locking the door behind me. Back at the studio, I sat on the unfamiliar mattress and began to type an email to Corinne. I was a data analyst. I dealt in facts and figures. The situation had become emotional and chaotic, so my response had to be the opposite. It had to be a clear, undeniable, and impersonal business proposition. Subject: offer to sublease our apartment address. Corinne, per your text today, it's clear our housing needs have diverged. I have secured alternative, temporary accommodation for myself effective immediately. This email serves as a formal offer for you to sublease the entire apartment at address for the remainder of my lease term. As you know, the lease is solely in my name. The terms are as follows: 1 monthly rent, $2,850. This is the current fair market rate for a similar unit in our building, which is the standard for a sublease agreement. 2. Security deposit, $2,850, required prior to the signing of the sublease agreement. 3. Utilities. You will be required to transfer all utilities, electricity, internet, gas, into your name within 5 business days of signing. 4. Leaseholder responsibility. As the primary leaseholder, I will continue to remit payment to the property management, funded by your payment to me. You will be responsible for adhering to all building rules and regulations. Please let me know if you accept these terms by Friday at 5 p.m. If you accept, I will have a formal sublease agreement drafted for your signature. If you decline, I will require you and any guests to vacate the premises within 15 days so I can make other arrangements for the property. I believe this provides you with a clear path forward. Leo. I hit send. My hands were perfectly steady. I turned my phone off and went to sleep in a strange bed in a strange room, and for the first time in months, I wasn't worried about being woken up. Update 1. The silence lasted for 17 hours. It was a blissful, uninterrupted stretch of quiet that I hadn't realized I was so desperately craving. I woke up in the studio, made a cup of instant coffee, and worked remotely. It wasn't until around lunchtime the next day that I decided to turn my phone back on. It was like setting off a digital car alarm. A cascade of notifications flooded the screen. 23 missed calls from Corinne, 8 from Julian, 4 from her mom, Marla. The text scrolled like a real-time feed of her dawning horror. Yesterday, 8 p.m. Where are you? Julian and I ordered pizza. Okay, not funny. I saw your email. Is this some kind of joke? A really, really bad one? $2,850. Are you insane? The rent is $2,100. You're trying to profit off me. Today, tenant. Pick up your phone, you coward. You can't just kick me out. I have rights. Julian looked it up. My mom is calling you. You better answer. She knows a lawyer. The sheer velocity of the entitlement was breathtaking. The immediate leap to her rights as a guest in my home. The accusation of me profiting off her, as if I owed her a subsidized lifestyle. The deployment of her mother as a threat. My phone started ringing again. It was Corinne. I took a deep breath and answered, putting it on speaker. Finally, she shrieked. There was no hello, just pure, incandescent rage. What is wrong with you? You sent me a landlord email? What is this, Leo? It's exactly what it says it is, Corinne, I said, my voice even. It's a formal offer. An offer? It's an eviction notice, and you're trying to scam me on the rent. We pay $2,100. Correct, I pay $2,100. That's the preferential rate I received for signing a 2-year lease and having an excellent rental history. The market rate for a new 1-year lease or a sublet is $2,850. I checked. It's not personal, it's just the market. I could almost hear the gears grinding in her head as she struggled to process this. But I'm your girlfriend. You can't charge me market rate. The terms of our relationship appear to be under review, I said coolly. You made it clear my presence in my own bed was negotiable. So I've made our living arrangements negotiable. You have until Friday at 5. This is about Julian, isn't it? You're this insecure? He's my best friend. It was just for a few nights. It was about being notified that I no longer had a claim to my own side of the bed. It was the final data point in a very long trend line, Corinne. The decision is made. There was a muffled sound and then Julian's voice came on the line. Bro, for real? This is messed up. Corinne is in tears. You're gonna make her homeless over a misunderstanding? Hello, Julian, I said, my voice dropping a notch. Does this mean you're offering to co-sign the sublease with her? With your stable income? Or are you just enjoying the free accommodation while it lasts? Silence. Then Corinne was back, sobbing now. Leo, please, just come home. We can talk about this. I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry. Julian can sleep on the couch. Just come home. It was the apology of a child who got caught, not someone who understood the transgression. The offer stands, Corinne. I won't be coming home. Let me know your decision by the deadline. I hung up. My next call was to my building's property management office. I explained I was considering subletting and wanted to understand the process. They confirmed everything: my right as sole leaseholder, the required credit and background check for any subletter, and the current market rate. The dirty tricks started that evening. A text from a mutual friend, Anya. Anya, hey Leo, just talked to Corinne. She's a mess, said you two had a fight and you just disappeared. Is everything okay? She's really worried you're having some kind of mental health crisis. The narrative was being spun. I wasn't a man enforcing a boundary. I was the unstable boyfriend. Me, hey Anya, appreciate you checking in, I'm fine. Corinne and I are having a significant disagreement about our living situation. I'm not having a crisis, I'm just handling it privately. The next day, Thursday, an email from Marla landed in my inbox, a masterclass in passive aggression. My heart is breaking for you both. To treat Corinne, who adores you, with such cold corporate language is deeply concerning. Don't let a moment of anger destroy something so beautiful. They were a united front of emotional manipulators. They thought this was a negotiation. It wasn't. Friday came. At 4:58 p.m., an email from Corinne arrived. Subject, offer to sublease fine. I'll stay. I can't believe you're doing this. This doesn't mean we're broken up. We are going to fix this. I'll get the money for the deposit from my mom. Send me the papers. I read the email. No apology, no accountability, and a chilling assertion that our relationship was still on the table. Phase 1 was complete. I forwarded her the building's official application forms. Now, the real battle would begin. Update 2. The first sign of trouble came 3 days after Corinne agreed to the sublease. The application form I sent her required proof of income, a credit check authorization, and references. Instead of the completed forms, I received a text. Corinne, this is ridiculous. You know my income. And a credit check? You're my boyfriend, not a stranger. Just tell the landlord I'm approved. You can vouch for me. The assumption that I would or even could circumvent the formal process was staggering. She saw rules as suggestions, things that applied to other people. Corinne, this is the building management's standard procedure for any subletter. It's not my rule. I can't vouch for you. They need the completed application to proceed. The deadline to submit it to them is this Friday. Her response was a string of angry emojis. Meanwhile, Julian was still there. I knew because a neighbor, an older gentleman named Mr. Henderson, who I occasionally chatted with, sent me a text about loud music coming from the apartment past 11 p.m. She was testing my resolve. Then came the attack on something deeply personal. I got another text from Corinne on Wednesday night. Corinne, OMG, I am so sorry. I was watering the new fiddle leaf fig Julian brought over as a housewarming gift and I tripped. Some water spilled on your big wooden bookshelf. I wiped it up right away. It should be fine. My blood ran cold. A housewarming gift? For a home she was being forced to pay market rate for? This wasn't an accident. It was a message. A petty, destructive little jab to let me know she could still hurt things I cared about. The last vestige of sentimentality I held for her evaporated. This was no longer just about enforcing a boundary. This was about protecting myself and my property from a hostile occupant. My response was immediate and methodical. First, I replied to Mr. Henderson, encouraging him to file formal complaints with management going forward, explaining it would be helpful. Next, I drafted a new email to Corinne, attaching the building's official rules with the sections on noise and property damage highlighted. Subject, urgent, lease compliance and property damage. Corinne, I have been notified of repeated noise complaints. Any fines will be your sole responsibility. Furthermore, regarding your text about the bookshelf, please send me detailed, high-resolution photos of the affected area immediately. The security deposit will be used to cover any and all repairs required due to negligence. If the cost of repair exceeds the deposit, I will pursue the remainder in small claims court. Finally, I am still awaiting your completed sublease application. Your continued occupancy is contingent on its approval. If management does not receive it by Friday at 5 p.m., I will be forced to rescind the offer and begin formal eviction proceedings. This is not a negotiation. The photos she sent back were blurry, but I could see it. A faint but definite cloudy ring on the second shelf. My stomach tightened with a cold fury. The predictable call from Marla came that evening. "Leo," she began, "I am shocked. You're threatening my daughter with eviction and accusing her of destroying your things over a tiny water spill. She is trying her best in a horrible situation you created." "Marla," I said, my patience gone. "Your daughter is an unauthorized occupant in my apartment who is violating noise ordinances and has damaged my property. The horrible situation was created when she decided my bed was a suitable place for her friend. This is the last time I will discuss this with you." I hung up. Friday arrived. At 5:30 p.m. I received an email from the property manager. Corinne's application was incomplete. The proof of income and credit check sections were blank. It was a game of chicken. She was trying to create a bureaucratic limbo, occupying the space without ever meeting the requirements. She thought she was being clever. I drafted a notice to cure or quit using a state-approved legal template. It stated, in no uncertain terms, that she had 3 business days to cure the deficiencies in her application or quit the premises. Failure would result in me filing for a formal eviction. I attached the screenshot of the property manager's email as Exhibit A. I sent it to her email and, for good measure, printed a copy, drove to the apartment, and taped it securely to the front door. As I stood in the hallway of my own building, taping an eviction notice to my own door, I didn't feel sad. I felt a grim sense of purpose. Final update. It has been 3 months since I taped that notice to my door. The silence in my apartment right now is absolute, broken only by the hum of the refrigerator. It's my silence, in my space. The notice to cure or quit was the bombshell that finally made Corinne understand this wasn't a relationship spat, it was a legal proceeding. A predictable flurry of texts oscillating between tearful pleading and furious threats followed. I didn't reply to a single one. I screenshotted everything and saved it to a dedicated folder. She missed the 3-day deadline. On the 4th day, I paid the filing fee and officially filed for a formal eviction in housing court. She probably imagined a dramatic courtroom scene. What she got was a summons to a dry, procedural hearing in a drab municipal building. At the hearing, she and Marla showed up dressed for a funeral. Corinne tried to tell the mediator a sob story about our loving relationship and how I had a sudden breakdown. Then it was my turn. I didn't speak about my feelings. I simply presented the data. The lease agreement, solely in my name. The text message from her, notifying me she was giving my bed to her friend. My formal, written offer to sublease the apartment. Her written acceptance of the offer. The email from property management showing her incomplete application. A copy of the notice to cure or quit, and proof of delivery. The noise complaint email from Mr. Henderson and the photos of the damaged bookshelf. The tired-looking mediator looked at Corinne. "Ma'am," she said, "he provided you with a perfectly legal and reasonable path to remain in the residence. You accepted the offer and then failed to meet its basic requirements. He is well within his rights." The case was decided in my favor. The court issued an order granting Corinne 14 days to vacate. Julian, unsurprisingly, had vanished the moment court papers were served. The move-out day was tense. I arranged with the landlord to be there, along with a building security guard, to supervise. I didn't want any false accusations of theft. As she carried out her last box, sobbing for show, she whispered, "I can't believe you've become this heartless monster." "I'm not a monster, Corinne," I replied, my voice devoid of emotion. "I'm just the landlord now, and you were a bad tenant." After they were gone, I walked back into my apartment. It was a disaster, but it was quiet. It was mine. I spent the next week methodically reclaiming the space. I hired professional cleaners, I spackled and repainted the scuffed walls, and then I turned my attention to the bookshelf. The water stain was as bad as I had feared. I spent an entire weekend carefully sanding down the entire shelf, starting with a coarse grit and working my way down to an ultra-fine one. I reapplied the tung oil layer by layer, rubbing it into the grain until the oak glowed with its original warmth. The stain was gone. The bookshelf looked better than new. It was a scar that had been healed. I deducted the cost of the cleaning and repair materials from her original security deposit. I sent her a check for the remaining balance of $87.50 along with an itemized list. I heard through the grapevine she had to move back in with her parents. Her grand city adventure, subsidized by me, was over. The revenge wasn't in the eviction notice. It was in the quiet, methodical restoration of my life. It was in sanding down the physical mark of her disrespect until it was gone. It was in the silence of my reclaimed sanctuary. She thought she could take over my space with a casual text. She learned that every action has a consequence, and that the person who controls the lease controls the home. She wanted a dramatic, emotional confrontation. Instead, I just changed the terms of service, and she couldn't afford the new price. She texted, "Your family reunion is boring, I'm not going." I responded, "No problem." Then I discovered my grandmother left me her estate worth $800,000. When the will reading made local news, her family suddenly became very interested. I, 31 male, just got back from the most surreal week of my life. 2 months ago, my girlfriend Veronica, 29, refused to come to my family reunion. Now she's threatening legal action because I won't share my inheritance with her. Let me explain how we got here. Veronica and I had been together for almost 3 years. Lived together for the last 18 months in a rental house, my name on the lease, but we split everything 50-50. She worked in pharmaceutical sales, made decent money, about $75. I'm an HVAC technician, made around 55Ks. Not rich, but comfortable. My family has this annual reunion every July. Nothing fancy, just a weekend at my Grandma Dorothy's old farmhouse. Potluck dinners, card games, catching up with cousins. Veronica came the first year we dated, spent the whole time on her phone, complained about the heat, the bugs, the boring old people stories. Last year she straight up refused to go. This year, when I mentioned it was coming up, she didn't even look up from her iPad. "Your family reunion is boring, I'm not going. It's just one weekend, Grandma Dorothy specifically asked about you." She rolled her eyes. "Your grandmother can barely remember my name. Besides, I have that spa weekend with Brittany and Jade that same weekend." The spa weekend she'd been planning for months. With her 2 best friends who honestly treated me like I was invisible whenever they came over. "No problem," I said. And I meant it. If she didn't want to spend time with my family, I wasn't going to force her. What I didn't tell her was that Grandma Dorothy had been calling me more often lately. Asking about old memories, wanting to hear about my work, my life. She'd been sick, heart problems, but seemed to be doing better. She specifically asked if that girl who doesn't like cornbread was coming. That was Veronica. Grandma remembered everything. The reunion was different, quieter. Grandma Dorothy looked frailer, but her mind was sharp as ever. She pulled me aside Saturday evening, sitting on the porch while everyone else was inside playing cards. "Tommy," she said, only she still called me that. "You're a good boy. Always were. Fixed my kitchen sink when you were 12, remember?" I remembered. Made a huge mess, but she'd been so proud. "You got a good head for fixing things, and for knowing what's worth fixing and what ain't." She patted my hand, her wedding ring loose on her thin finger. "That girl of yours, she thinks we're boring?" "Grandma, she just had other plans. Boy, I got 2 master's degrees and ran a construction company for 30 years. I ain't boring. I'm selective about who deserves my interesting." 3 weeks later, Grandma Dorothy passed away in her sleep. Veronica's response when I called her crying from the hospital, "Oh no, that's sad, but at least she was old, right?" It was her time. I drove to the funeral alone. Veronica had a crucial client dinner she couldn't miss. Update 1. The will reading was yesterday. I thought I might get Grandma's old pickup truck, maybe some tools from Grandpa's workshop. What I wasn't expecting was her lawyer, Mr. Garrison, to hand me an envelope with my name on it. Inside was a handwritten letter and a copy of her will. The letter, I'm paraphrasing some parts. Tommy, if you're reading this, I'm probably giving St. Peter a hard time about the air conditioning up here. I want you to know I've been watching you these past years. You work hard, you're loyal, and you've got your grandpa's gift for fixing things. I'm leaving you the farmhouse and the land, 42 acres, plus what's left of my savings and investments. Use it wisely. Maybe that girl of yours will think we're less boring when she sees what boring built. Or maybe you'll realize what your grandpa told me 50 years ago. Money doesn't change people. It just shows you who they really were all along. Love, Grandma Dorothy. The estate value, approximately $800,000. The farmhouse and land were worth about $500. Developers had been sniffing around that area for years. The rest was in savings, bonds, and a surprisingly robust investment portfolio. My Uncle Richard got $50 and some family heirlooms. My Aunt Diane got $50 and Grandma's jewelry. A few other cousins got smaller amounts. But the bulk went to me. I sat in my truck in the parking lot for an hour, just staring at the papers. Then I drove home. Veronica was on the couch with Jade and Brittany, wine glasses everywhere, laughing at something on TV. "Hey babe," she said without looking up. "How was the lawyer thing? Did you get that old truck?" "Yeah, something like that." I went to bed early. Needed to think, needed to process. Grandma Dorothy had changed my entire life, and the woman I'd been with for 3 years couldn't even remember she'd died. Then this morning, everything changed. Mr. Garrison had filed the will with the probate court. Standard procedure. What he didn't expect was for some local reporter to be there covering a different story, see the filing and recognize the farmhouse address. Apparently, there'd been a big development deal trying to buy that land for months. The headline in the local paper, "Local HVAC tech inherits prime development land worth $500,000. It went online. My phone started blowing up. Old high school friends, distant relatives, everyone suddenly wanted to catch up. But the most interesting reaction came from my living room. "Tommy!" Veronica screamed. "What the hell is this?" She was holding her phone, showing me the article. Jade and Brittany were behind her, eyes wide. "Why didn't you tell me? $800,000. It was yesterday. I'm still processing." "Processing? You're processing? We've been together 3 years and you didn't immediately tell me we just became rich." "We." Interesting word choice. I needed time to think. Think about what? Oh my God, we can quit our jobs. We can travel. We can buy that Mercedes I've been wanting. We. For this is my inheritance from my grandmother, the grandmother whose funeral you couldn't attend. She actually laughed. "Are you seriously going to be petty about that? I had to work, and now I don't." "We don't," Brittany chimed in. "Girl, you better lock that down. Put a ring on it before he runs off with some gold digger." The irony was so thick you could cut it with a knife. I stood up. "I'm going to stay at a hotel tonight. I need space to think." Veronica's face went from excited to dangerous. "Don't you dare walk out that door, Thomas Mitchell. We're a couple. Your money is our money." "We're not married, Veronica. 3 years might as well be married, common law." "Not in this state." I'd already looked it up. "We don't have common law marriage here." I grabbed a bag and left. As I was getting in my truck, I heard Jade yell, "You better get a lawyer, girl. He can't just keep all that money." Checked into a comfort inn. Turned off my phone. Tomorrow I'm meeting with Mr. Garrison to discuss the estate transfer and, more importantly, protecting it. Update 2. The entitlement escalation has been something. Day 1 after I left, Veronica called 73 times. The texts ranged from, "Baby, please come home. We need to talk about our future. You're being selfish. I deserve half after supporting you for 3 years. My dad knows a lawyer." Supporting me? We split everything 50-50, and she made more than me. Day 2, she got creative. Showed up at my work with lunch. My coworker Steve gave me a heads up, so I went out the back. She waited 2 hours. My boss finally told her to leave or he'd call the cops. But day 3, yesterday, is when it got interesting. I'd met with Mr. Garrison and then a financial advisor he recommended. Set up a trust, moved the liquid assets, started the paperwork to transfer the property. Solid legal protection. I went back to the house to get my stuff. Figured Veronica would be at work. Nope. She was there with her parents, Robert and Denise. They'd driven 3 hours to ambush me. Robert started immediately. Tom, let's be reasonable here. You and Veronica have built a life together. This inheritance should be seen as a blessing for both of you. Robert, with all due respect, your daughter told me my family was boring. She couldn't be bothered to spend one weekend with them. Denise jumped in. People say things they don't mean. She was stressed with work. She went to a spa that weekend. Veronica started crying. Big theatrical tears. I loved your grandmother. I'm grieving too. You met her twice in 3 years. You called her that old lady who smells like mothballs. I was joking. Robert tried a different angle. Look, Tom, if you're going to be this selfish, at least consider what Veronica has invested in this relationship. Time, emotion, her youth. Her youth? She's 29, not 92. She's invested the same as me. We both put in time. We both paid our share. That doesn't entitle her to my inheritance. Then Veronica played what she thought was her ace. I'm pregnant. I actually laughed. No, you're not. How do you know? Because you had your period last week. You sent me to the store for tampons. Her parents looked confused. Denise whispered, Veronica, is this true? The tears stopped instantly. Fine, but I could be pregnant. We've talked about kids. You said kids were, and I quote, dream killers that ruin your body and your bank account. I started loading my stuff into the truck, box by box. They followed me, all three talking at once. This is financial abuse. We'll sue. You can't just abandon her. What will people think? As I loaded the last box, Veronica grabbed my arm. If you leave, we're done. Forever. I won't take you back when you realize your mistake. I know. You're really choosing money over love? No. I'm choosing respect over entitlement. My grandmother's dying wish over your spa weekends. The family you called boring over the woman who couldn't be bothered to show up. I left. Blocked all 3 of them before I hit the highway. But they weren't done. Oh no. Update 3. The extinction burst. Wait, no, that's not right. Let me call it what it really was. A desperation scramble. It started with a letter from a lawyer. Not a good lawyer, mind you. Some strip mall attorney named Gerald Finch who spelled my name wrong 3 times in 2 pages. The gist. Veronica was seeking equitable distribution of shared assets and compensation for domestic partnership contributions. I forwarded it to Mr. Garrison, who actually chuckled on the phone. Mr. Mitchell, this is what we call a fishing expedition. He's hoping you'll panic and settle. I'll handle it. His response was beautiful. 1 page citing state law, precedent, and the fact that 1. We were never married. 2. Never had combined finances. 3. The inheritance was specifically excluded from marital property even if we had been married. 4. She had no standing whatsoever. He also included a cease and desist regarding further contact. That should have been the end. It wasn't. Veronica's next move was to call my mother. My sweet, conflict-averse mother who just wanted everyone to get along. Mom called me crying. Tommy, Veronica says you've become cruel since you got the money, that you've changed. Maybe you should give her something just to keep the peace? Mom, did she tell you she refused to come to Grandma Dorothy's funeral? She said she wasn't invited. Mom, she was invited. She had a spa day instead. Long pause. That little witch. My mother doesn't swear, so witch was basically her dropping an F-bomb. Then came the really stupid move. Veronica went on social media, posted this long thing about how money changes people and how greed destroys love, with all these vague references that anyone who knew us would understand were about me. The comments were interesting. Some of her friends rallied around her. But then my cousin Angela, who'd been at the funeral, commented, "Didn't you skip Dorothy's funeral for a spa day? Just checking." The post got deleted within an hour. But the peak desperation came yesterday. I was at the farmhouse, meeting with a contractor about some repairs when a car pulled up. Veronica got out, but she wasn't alone. She had some guy with her. Tall, muscular, looked like he hit the gym every day and twice on Sunday. "Tom," she said, all casual. "This is Brad, my new boyfriend." Brad looked uncomfortable as hell. "Good for you," I said and went back to talking with the contractor. She raised her voice. "Aren't you jealous? Don't you care that I've moved on? Veronica, you're at my grandmother's house with some random dude trying to make me jealous. The only person who should be embarrassed here is Brad." Brad mumbled something about waiting in the car. "You can't just ignore me," she screamed. We were together for 3 years. The contractor, an older guy named Jim, looked at her and said, "Ma'am, you need to leave. This is private property. It should be my property too." Jim pulled out his phone. "I'm calling the sheriff. Tom, you want to press trespassing charges?" Veronica ran back to the car. As they drove off, I could see her yelling at Brad, who looked like he was questioning all his life choices. "Last night, I got a text from an unknown number. This is Brad. Sorry about today. She said you were stalking her, and she needed protection. I'm out. Good luck, man." This morning, Veronica's dad called. I almost didn't answer, but figured, let's see where this goes. "Tom, you win. We'll call off the lawyer. Veronica's moving back in with us. Just, can you at least cover her portion of the lease for the next few months? She can't afford it alone." The lease she's not on. The house I was already planning to handle through the end of the term because I'm not vindictive. Just done. "I'll pay through the end of the lease, Robert. 2 months, then she needs to figure it out." "That's fair. Thank you. And Tom, I'm sorry about your grandmother. She sounded like a remarkable woman." She was. Update 4. Thought I was done updating, but the last 2 weeks provided an ending I couldn't have scripted better. First, some good news. Started fixing up the farmhouse. Nothing fancy, new roof, updated kitchen, fixing the porch. Jim the contractor introduced me to his daughter Emma, who runs an architectural salvage business. She's been helping me restore the place while keeping its character. Smart, funny, and when I mentioned the reunion drama, she said, "Anyone who thinks family stories are boring isn't listening right. We're taking it slow, but it's nice talking to someone who gets it." Now for the Veronica finale. Remember that development company that wanted Grandma's land? They reached out, offered $750 for just the back 30 acres, leaving me the house and 12 acres around it. I was considering it when I got a call from Robert. "Tom, I hate to ask, but did Veronica ever mention anything about a finder's fee?" What? Turns out, Veronica had contacted the development company claiming she was my domestic partner and negotiating on my behalf. Told them she could convince me to sell for a 5% consultation fee. $37,500. She'd even sent them photos of us together as proof of our relationship. The development company called Robert because they'd done their due diligence and found out we weren't together. They thought it might be fraud and wanted to verify before potentially involving law enforcement. "Tom, I'm mortified. We had no idea she was doing this." "What do you want me to do, Robert?" "Whatever you think is right. She's our daughter, but this has to stop." I called the development company, explained the situation, told them she had no authority to negotiate for me. They apologized, said they'd withdraw any dealings with her. I didn't press charges, felt like that would be excessive. But I did sell the back acreage to a different company for $800. The twist? I donated $50 to the local historical society in Grandma Dorothy's name. They're creating a scholarship fund for young women in construction and engineering. The announcement was in the paper today. Veronica saw it. I know because she texted from her mom's phone. "You could have given me that money. I actually knew you. That charity didn't." I didn't respond, but Denise did. She sent me a screenshot of her reply to her own daughter. "Veronica, stop. That charity will help young women who actually show up, unlike you. Brutal, but deserved." Final update. This really is the last update. Promise. The house is almost done. Emma and I have been spending more time together. She's teaching me about restoration while I fix her terrible coffee maker. She came to last week's family dinner at my aunt's place. Fit right in, laughed at Uncle Richard's terrible jokes, helped Cousin Angela with her homework. When my aunt brought out photo albums, Emma asked to hear every story. But this update isn't about my new relationship. It's about the letter I got yesterday. It was from Veronica, handwritten, no return address, but I recognized the handwriting. "Tom, by the time you read this, I'll have moved to another state. Dad got me a job with a friend's company. Fresh start. I wanted you to know that I get it now. Not the money. I mean, I get why you didn't share it, but that's not what I mean. I've been going through old photos, packing. Found one from that first reunion. Your grandmother was teaching me to play gin rummy. I was actually smiling. Really smiling, not posing. I'd forgotten that afternoon. She told me about meeting your grandfather, about building their business, about raising your dad. I was interested. I was engaged. Somewhere along the way, I decided your family was beneath me. Decided their stories were boring, their traditions were outdated, their love was something to endure rather than embrace. The money didn't change you. It revealed me. And I don't like what I see. Your grandmother left you more than money. She left you proof that you knew something I didn't. That showing up is more valuable than showing off. That boring Sunday dinners create more wealth than spa weekends. That family isn't about impressing people, it's about being present for them. I won't apologize for the lawyer or the lies. We both know they were desperate moves by a desperate person. But I am sorry for that text. The one about your family being boring. They weren't boring. I was just too self-important to listen. I hope you keep the farmhouse in the family. I hope you fill it with people who understand its value. I hope you find someone who sees what your grandmother saw in those Sunday dinners and summer reunions. I hope you find someone who shows up. Veronica P.S. Tell your mom the potato salad recipe she gave me 3 years ago is the only thing I make that my dad actually compliments. It's the one family tradition of yours I kept. I sat on Grandma Dorothy's porch, reading that letter twice. Then I folded it up, put it in the desk drawer, and went back to sanding the railings. Emma came by later with coffee and sandwiches. While we ate, she asked about the reunion coming up next month, the first one at the farmhouse since Grandma passed. Will it be weird? She asked. Without your grandmother there? Maybe a little, but she left us the place to fill it with new memories. Can't do that if we don't show up. Want company? Always. We sat there on the porch, watching the sunset over the back field. The same porch where Grandma Dorothy told me about knowing what's worth fixing and what ain't. She was right, as usual. Some things can't be fixed because they were never really broken, just incompatible. And some things are worth fixing because they were built on solid foundations. The farmhouse is the latter. It just needed someone to show up and do the work. As for Veronica, well, Grandpa was right too. Money doesn't change people. It just shows you who they really were all along. I'm keeping the farmhouse, I'm keeping the traditions, and I'm keeping the people who show up. That's all Grandma Dorothy ever asked for anyway. Edit. Since a lot of you asked, yes, the reunion was amazing. Emma made Grandma Dorothy's cornbread recipe, found it in her handwritten cookbook, and it was perfect. My mom cried. The good kind of tears. The scholarship fund has already selected its first recipient, a 19-year-old woman studying construction management. And Robert sent me a text last week. Veronica is doing well at her new job. She joined a local volunteer group. Maybe she learned something after all. Maybe she did.